Welcome back, everybody. This is Eric here with Iraq Veteran 8888. Today I've got a very special video for you. We've been down here in South Georgia hanging out, and I've got my buddy Chris here with Up North Air Gunner hanging out. He came down with FX for us to do some filming here with the Crown Arrow and the Dreamline Arrow launchers. And it's been fantastic. He's got a wonderful archery channel. He also does a lot of stuff with Advocacy for bow hunters and things like that. Check him out, go subscribe. I'll put a link down in the description box below. Let's help his channel grow because he's got a lot of great things going on. And I wanted to just kind of drive some conversation and have a little chat, have some fun. Before we get started, I would like to thank our friends at Pyramid Air for supporting today's video. If you're looking for anything related to air guns, tanks, fill lines, adapters, hoses, and all kind of accoutrements, if you will, projectiles and everything, they're definitely a go-to source. So check them out, and a big thanks to them for supporting our efforts here. We're able to get out here and do all this cool hunting stuff because we do have help from some of our supporters here on the channel. So, dude, so tell me a little bit about your channel. I mean, I know this advocacy thing is like a really big deal to me, because, in the 2A world, I'm totally a 2A advocate, so it's interesting to see that crossover in the archery and in the hunting side, and with the rulemaking and laws and changes to regulations. I do want to discuss that, but tell me a little bit about your channel, man.
Absolutely. Probably about 5 years ago, I was really big into archery and just typical rifle hunting, shotgun hunting in Michigan, and I really shifted everything over to air guns. And so at that point of just transitioning everything over to air guns, I started realizing that things are still new here in the United States with legislation and hunting regulations. Michigan was one of the very first states that allowed for big bore airgun hunting to hunt deer with. And as I started looking into that, transitioning from archery to big bore air guns, I wanted to start shooting arrow slingers in Michigan, air powered air guns. And it's not legal there yet. And as I started looking at different states all over the United States, here in Georgia, it's legal during the primitive hunting season. And other states have different structures with their wildlife agencies of how they allow different methods of take, which is the technical term of what you can hunt a deer with or big game with.
Big shout out to Rick Ward here in Georgia for making that happen. My buddy Rick Ward.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, look, if it wasn't for Rick and his efforts,
absolutely,
we wouldn't be hunting deer with air guns in Georgia.
I'll tell you, for me, when I first got into this, I actually started seeing Rick Ward's videos on the Air Force Texan, and I kind of learned a little bit from Rick of like how to talk to wildlife agencies, how to talk to regulators about what this stuff is all about. And so I dove in there in Michigan. We had a representative that put a bill out there to allow for these to be used for disabled hunters and disabled veterans during the archery season, and then allowing it to be legal for all other hunters during the regular rifle and firearm seasons. In my mind, it was like, okay, our freedoms as hunters, our freedoms as Americans. I'm like, okay, that makes sense. This should just sail right through the House, the Senate, and get signed by the governor. And it has been a 4-year process of trying to get this passed. And in other states, it has been passed. It hasn't caused any problems. As a matter of fact, it's probably opened up a lot of new hunting opportunities for other people that may not have the capabilities of drawing a bow or cranking a crossbow. So, yeah.
But, okay. Here's the interesting caveat. We were discussing this over beers over the last couple of days here at Deer Camp, and I really wanted to bring Chris in this conversation because I was really fascinated by it, and I wanted to share this with you guys to just know how the regulation side can go when it comes to this sort of stuff. So tell them about how this goes. When you go and you're lobbying to try to get some regulation changed or some hunting laws changed,
right.
Tell us about the pushback you're getting.
So going through the Airgun Sporting Association, which is the association that helps us oversee regulations in the airgun sector, whenever I first got into this work, I was thinking it was going to be like the anti-hunters, right? Or the animal rights activists that would come out against any kind of hunting accoutrement.
We've been using that word a bit. I love it.
Yeah, what I found was it was actually, it's the hunter on hunter attacks that sometimes becomes the biggest obstacle of us as outdoorsmen and women to have the freedoms that we want here in the United States, to give us our God-given right to get out and hunt. And sometimes hunters come together because they want to protect their way of hunting or their season they think that they have claims to. And that, quite honestly, Eric, has been the biggest challenge we've had, is other hunters feeling that maybe their form of hunting is superior to yours. And I get it. Archery, it takes a lot of skill and a lot of practice to hold proper ethical groups. A lot of times people don't have time, or maybe they had shoulder surgery or back problems and they can't draw a bow. A tool like the FX arrow gun, it gives them the capability to get back into the woods. And I'll tell you what, if I'm 85 years old and I can't draw a bow, I want to hunt till the day I die.
Look, I am so happy that we're engaging in this conversation because I kind of feel like there's a very unique opportunity in this discussion to make the case for this.
Yeah.
Maybe in ways that people never thought about. And look, it's okay. Perspective is fun. Like when we talk to each other and we actually engage in discourse, we come up with a solution, right? And if people are actually interested in the conversation, if they're interested in coming up with a solution, they will find that solution. There was, I use Twitter. Look, I know not everybody likes Twitter, but I went on Twitter and I made a post about the Crown Arrow. If you guys don't know, we've been out filming with this thing, and we have a whole nother hunting episode where we harvested some awesome deer with this particular rig. So make sure you check that out. I'm not gonna cover this too much in this video, but we have filmed some hunting stuff while we're here. But in terms of this particular arrow launcher, I just shared a photo of it on Twitter and said, hey, shh, things are happening, because these things are pretty quiet. I guess that's what I was going for. But anyway, the point is, a guy was like, well, that's not real archery. I mean, what, are you too weak to pull back a bow? You seem like a strong guy. Why can't you just pull back a bow and use a real bow? Or that's not real hunting.
Yeah.
You always hear people say that. That's not real hunting. And I was like, well, wait a minute. Have you ever used an inline muzzle loader during muzzle loading season? So there's a group of people that would say, well, if you're using a modern inline muzzle loader, you're not really hunting with black powder, right? But my argument is that it's a gateway drug. And I experienced that gateway drug in this particular week. If you would have asked me a week ago if I really cared too much for archery, I will tell you that I've been hunting deer for over 25 years and I have never used a bow and quite frankly, never really cared to use a bow. It just never occurred to me, that maybe bows are a thing and that maybe it's a fun pastime or whatever. I was always, all right, to your effect, I was always a hardcore black powder guy. Yep. I grew up watching Jim Shockey, and I really loved Jim Shockey's hunts because he was always about black powder.
Yep.
And then I went down the rabbit hole of using like old school military antique rifles to hunt deer with, and that kind of became my thing. And I really loved using black powder, right? But everybody that shot black powder always seems to start out on a modern inline with a modern optic, illuminated reticle, and it's like, one would argue, well, is that really black powder hunting? In the tradition of what black powder shooting is that really black powder hunting?
Right.
Does it really honor the traditions in the same way? Now, some people would say yes, some people would say no, but I would argue the gateway drug is this.
Yeah.
Right? This arrow launcher is a gateway drug because someone who is used to guns, used to illuminated reticles, used to more modern features, they might go out like I experienced this week, and they try to schwack a deer with one. Maybe they harvest one, and then they go, wow, the feeling I got seeing that deer get so close to me. He had to get closer. I had to have better tracking skills because, you have to follow a blood trail. The shot placement was more important. And then it puts it in your mind, wait a minute. This is cool, and I'm totally want to have the ability to use this when I can't use a bow, but now I'm much more inclined to go, you know what, I think I want to try actual archery
Absolutely.
now. So it's a gateway drug.
It totally is a gateway drug.
And that's the way that these legislators should look at it, as it's not meant to replace traditional archery, it's just meant to get people into the sport.
Absolutely. And let's talk about that idea of like heritage and like the origins of some of these technologies. So in Michigan, right, I'm a Michigan born and bred hunter, and Fred Bear from Michigan is the person that we give so much credit to basically expanding and creating what we know as modern archery technology today. He really was one of the forefathers of growing the archery market that we know today. But if you have people like, Frederick Axelson and, some of these other airgun companies, they are the ones that are now taking these technologies. This technology was actually back when like Leonardo da Vinci actually had created an airgun that can shoot bolts. So the technology is not new. We just have some innovators that are in our space right now. They're bringing these things to market. So if we talk about heritage, you look at, Lewis and Clark in the United States, right? They did the great expedition across to the West. They brought an air gun with them, okay? So my heritage as an air gunner is just as important as an archer's heritage if they want to harken back to, Fred Bear and some of the other older archers that really kind of expanded that market. So that's my point in all this is that's my hunter freedom, how I want to spend my time in the woods. But I'll tell you what, Eric, I'm going home next week and I'm going to be picking up my compound bow and and I'm just going to be archery. And so I want to have every method to take that's ethical and lethal to hunt with in the woods, and that's all I'm looking for.
It's a tool in the freaking bag.
That's it.
There's nothing wrong with having tools at your disposal. And think about the Native Americans, right?
Mm-hmm.
Could you imagine, all right, you had some generation of Native Americans that were using sticks and rocks and atlatls to kill deer, and all of a sudden some young whippersnapper, freaking young forward-thinking Indian said, I'm gonna make a bow.
Yep.
And then started stretching crap and sinew and taking, trying to bend poles and do all kind of, bend pieces of limb and make arrows. And there's probably some old crotchety Indian looking at him and going, what's this? Well, shoot the atlatl, son. Why don't you just use an atlatl? You don't need that bow. What is this crap? What are you doing? What are you doing? But you have to innovate. You have to change. Like, that's all in the nature of innovation. Innovation is an important part of the human experience. Like,
Sure.
We are explorers. We want to explore. We want to, cross new ground. We want to find new ways to do things. We want to discover new technologies. We want to find a better path,
Yeah.
And just like our Native American ancestors, that came before us, they were always looking for easier ways to take food. I mean, if you went in a time machine and took this to them and gave them some instruction and showed them how to use it, they would probably be like, oh, I'm going to kill so much stuff, but that's okay, right? So
Right.
I was really interested in this conversation because I wanted to share this with people about your advocacy work. And
Right.
I mean, I knew that there were hunting regulations that were always kind of being submitted, and maybe people are trying to change hunting regulations in either direction to make them more strict, to make them looser, or to change technologically based regulations such as like what technologies can be used. And I've always thought that's just such a strange concept of saying, well, archers get this special time,
Right.
but I mean, so what? My black powder gun isn't my heritage?
Right.
A center fire rifle isn't my heritage? I mean, we use guns to fight wars.
Yeah.
Why does it become that archery as a heritage is more important than black powder as a heritage?
Or air guns.
Or air guns.
Yep.
Or center fire rifles. Like, why should hunting season be divvied up and given special treatment to this person or that person? And then why should those technologies be limited? I've never understood that. It just doesn't make sense.
And it doesn't take anything
Everyone's
away.
culture is different. Everyone's
Absolutely.
heritage is different.
Right.
What if your heritage is just growing up on this?
Sure. Yeah.
What if you never even used a piece of traditional archery equipment?
Yeah, and I get it. The amount of skill that goes into that archery, it takes a lot of practice, especially if the traditional bow guys. I mean, that takes
Yeah.
a lot of dedication. And in my mind, that is the pinnacle of hunting. Those folks that are like making their own equipment, they're trying to get deer within 10 yards. Mm-hmm. So those traditional archery guys, that's top notch.
We were telling you about our buddy Steve,
Yeah.
Scott, I'm sorry, at Whack Outdoors.
Yep.
Dude, I mean, this guy makes his own bows, makes his own arrows.
Right.
I mean, there are guys that are totally just making all of their own equipment from scratch.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's impressive to see the level of attention
Yeah.
and care they put into what they do.
And the
man.
thing is, as an air gunner, I put that. I mean, seriously, I shoot my gun probably at least 5 out of 7 days a week. I am constantly tinkering. I'm learning, using new technologies with the air gun sector. Our dedication as air gunners is just as much as those traditional archery guys. And that's just all we're asking for is access to the woods and having a fair shake at things. And in Michigan, my biggest thing with that House bill that's sitting in the Senate right now for the 4th year is it's focusing on disabled veterans and disabled hunters. And if we're limiting access to disabled veterans, I've got a problem with that.
Look, I'll be honest. If you would have asked me 10 years ago if air gunners were as dedicated as black powder guys or as dedicated as, reloaders and things in the centerfire world, I probably would have been like, I'm not so sure. But after the last 10 years or so being exposed to a lot more air gunners, I can say that air gunners are totally dedicated to their craft. And I think it's very important for people to remember, that air gunning is a very viable way to take game, both with arrows and with big bore, and the technology's growing, and the people involved in these circles are very passionate about what they do. And I think it's important for these legislatures, to remember that, it's a very important part of people's heritage that a lot of people are into air gunning. So, dude, check out Chris's channel. It's fantastic. I'll put a link in the description box below. I wanted to, have him on to kind of talk about a few things. The advocacy work is something that I feel people kind of put by the wayside. They don't really think about it. So we wanted to kind of bring awareness to that and let you know that it's a thing. And look, get involved in your state.
Yeah.
If you're, if you're passionate about it and you think that there's a way you can get involved, you can change the regulations, you can change the laws, you can petition these people. You know, you just have to go through the right channels and be very well articulated and put together a great presentation. I mean, like Rick Ward did here.
Absolutely.
I mean, you're doing the same thing that Rick did down here.
Yep.
And as long as you can articulate things well and come away with a bit of common sense and some, just good data, they'll be forced to really see the truth of the situation.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I think most of them are pretty logical people.
They are. You just got to get involved. I mean, I think a lot of times people like complaining about things, but they don't go out and they vote. They don't vote, right? They don't get involved in their own politics. If you're a hunter or an outdoorsman or a woman, get out there and get involved. Find out who your state congressman or congresswoman or who's in your Senate. Find out how your state's wildlife agency makes laws and regulations. Just getting involved, it's going to be the first step to making sure we can use the woods however we want to as hunters.
Right on, man.
Yeah.
Dude, thanks for hanging out.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
And it's been such a great deer camp. We're going to do more of this, I'm sure. But guys, make sure you check out his channel. Appreciate you so much for tuning in. Don't forget, check out Pyramid Air. Great people. Big thanks to them for supporting our content. And we will see you soon. And don't forget, check out those hunting videos. We've gotten a lot of great footage from this shoot, and you are absolutely going to love every minute of it, I promise. We'll see you soon.